doing it. Did you design your logo?
Yeah. Everything means something else because I do a lot of outdoor work with people as well when it's appropriate. So in that process, obviously you've got Trident for the surfing, and plus my Royal Marines connection, amphibious and all that type of stuff.
Great. Oh, that's pretty cool. I like that. That's clever. Then it's not anybody else's. A lot of therapists just go to Fiverr, to be honest. But
trees and flowers.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, Dan, welcome back. We're ready to get it going. Basically, this is everybody out there. This is the sort of part 2, I guess you could say, of the Dan Glaze Hour. It's a new feature. Be amazed with Glaze. That doesn't rhyme. Glaze can amaze. That's a dumb thing. Please don't turn off the broadcast just because of what just happened. Anyone?
It's too late.
It's too late now. We're going to be going just plowing ahead into a little bit more of anxiety management, and just all those things that we were touching on last time. Previously on this broadcasting forum, we talked about things that have to do with breathing and physiological exercises for anxiety, and I know there's a lot more. So let's just peel in. Where should we start, Dan?
How about, so obviously if we have a little recap, it was 44 minutes and it went on for a long time, and basically what we covered was a couple of breathing techniques, and we covered a bit of grounding and orientating, really to pull, when you get that emotional stimuli, to pull you back into that prefrontal cortex, to that rational, logical mind. Now that's pretty cool, but we can't all sit there, even if it's small stimuli or a big stimuli. We can't just sit there breathing and orientating all the time. We have to do something next, because otherwise it will stay. Sometimes it might subside, but it will come back.
It's an interesting thing, whereas sometimes what we're doing is just trying to buy a partial part of a second, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even with extreme things, I think we talked about the plunging your face into cold water, or breathing exercise, whatever it is that works. You're really just gaining a few seconds and saying, now what? And I like that. It's like, now what? Go back to panic is like what the brain wants to do, right?
Oh yeah, because evolutionary wise, that limbic system is bigger and more powerful in a driver to do that stuff. Wants to be heard, where our prefrontal cortex in evolutionary terms is a lot younger and a lot less powerful, and so it can become overridden by those emotions. But that's where we want to be, to almost ascertain the fact of that situation that we're in, that is that fight, flight, freeze response.
Yeah, fight, flight, freeze, or and when we sit in there, it's just kind of like being a car in idle, right? Basically.
Yeah.
And so where do you go with that when you say do those exercises? We're able to buy ourselves a few seconds, and then what do we do? That's pretty important time.
Yeah. So as we said with the exercises before, repetition is the key. Repetition is the key to them becoming competent at them and then working, because we're trying to form a habit. It's no good having that stimuli, then expecting to have the rationale at that time to bring these things into play. It doesn't work. But once you do get good at it, and you do buy that space and time, and you understand you are in your rational, logical part of the brain, I try and get my clients to do something called CCR. And I like to term that as challenge, control, and rationalize. What we're doing in that moment is we're accepting, and in this instance, because we're talking about it today, anxiety, but it could be anger, it could be some other overriding emotion. But when it comes in to you, and you're there, and you go, this is going on. It's that, first of all, it's that internal dialogue with yourself, and saying, hey, almost that acceptance. This is a natural reaction to stress. Right, I need to get this under control, because otherwise it's going to get worse for me. And that's almost the initial challenge.
Do you find that I find the start of so many things is just sort of a general acceptance that we have of the fact that it's okay to be going through what we're going through.
Yeah.
How many times do you hear somebody say, I was being stupid the other day, or, I was just dumb. I just let myself get lazy. I just let myself get, we have all these words that we're sort of trained to use, about ourselves, that it's like shaming and saying I had a panic attack in public. That's more of just a clinical medical statement about myself. It would be like if I said I had an eczema breakout, right? Not as sudden or traumatic to have that in the grocery store. However, if I have a panic attack, all of a sudden that says something moral about me in my mind sometimes. So at least I find that that's a key, is trying to get ourselves to accept this is happening to me and it's okay.
Yeah.
Right. It's part of the me that I am, and I can do stuff because it's okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And not only that, it's a natural phenomenon. It's something that's intrinsically built into us to protect us. Sometimes it can go out of balance, and this is what we're trying to get back in control. We're seeing threat where there is no threat. Amygdala is starting to fire off when actually there is an immediate threat to our safety. And this is the kind of stuff we're trying to just to grab hold of and go, whoa, I know what you are. You don't scare me.
You work with a lot of people with a military related trauma, right? I mean, being a veteran yourself. Yeah.
But also emergency services personnel as well. So fireys, ambulancemen, policemen, etc. Lots of veterans as well as serving, but also a lot of civilian people as well that have been through trauma. Because let's be open honest, trauma is a massive subject. Everybody likes to just use the terminology PTSD or whatever background you come from, using the same type of stuff, whereas there's a vast almost array of traumatic diagnosis or different people's views on what it is. So anxiety, and especially hypervigilance and anxiety and anger and lots of other things, are a huge part of this. So although I look at it from a trauma point of view, it works in all other contexts of our mental and physical well-being and health.
It's an interesting thing, because I find that it's like a cycle, right? We have, in some cases, in fact, this is where trauma-informed therapy comes from, right? As they say, in more cases than we used to think, trauma does play a role in the genesis of these problems. And then you've also got, even if it's something that's purely neurological disorder of some kind, or just purely a chemical reaction that we might be having, if and I think there's debate to be had there, probably, if there are times where trauma isn't a role, which maybe it is, maybe it isn't possible. You are traumatized often by the symptoms of the anxiety, right? Because you're going through that in a panic attack. You're having the experience that you have in any kind of trauma, right? It's there.
High level threat.
Yeah.
This high level threat. And so that internal dialogue, that acceptance at first to challenge, is part of that step. You may still be doing some breathing or whatever, but because you are in that rational place, boom, right, I'm now going to consciously talk to myself. I am going to say these things to myself and understand them. I hear lots of people say the first sign of madness is people talk to themselves. I would argue the first sign of madness is people that don't talk to themselves. Because there's understandings that we have by doing that.
Yeah, you're not helping the relationship by not talking to someone, and that goes for yourself too, right?
Definitely. You are your own best friend.
Yeah.
You understand yourself and are aware of the way that you work and you function, and what experiences in your life have certain reactions on you, and the way then you behave in given situations or with given people. Is highly, highly important to each of us. And once you do get that awareness, it almost is an enlightening moment for you for the rest of your life that continues to build and grow.
Yeah. And it's an interesting thing, because I think we always think of ourselves as either kind of making progress or not, as if it's a binary thing. I'm either making progress or I'm not making progress, right? And it's like, it's actually, there's a big range there of how much progress am I making, right? And also, we're always afraid of backsliding. And I always like to, point that out that no, actually, we're not really backsliding as much as, we might have reoccurrence or we might have anxiety, but we're not messing up somehow if we go back to having more panic or those. It's just an ongoing thing we're managing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're just experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Within physics itself, it's impossible to go backwards. Time is always shifting. So when I have people that say they've relapsed, I'm saying, whoa, no, you've just had a bump, you've just been challenged. Sometimes we are in a place where we're well fed, well slept, everything's going okay. And so when that bump comes, when that hurdle, that challenge comes, we're like, boom, I've got you, ding, 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 doing all this stuff I know, and whack, I'm through it. And it's like, woohoo, look at me. But there's so many variables in such a complex life that you might not even realize that you're a bit down at the moment because you haven't been sleeping well. Maybe baby's been keeping you up, or there's home stuff or work stuff, etc. Sleep is vitally important, and it's an underrated thing, really. It's one of the first things I go through with my clients in practice is what their sleep routine's like. Do they understand, process S versus process C and circadian rhythms and all that type of stuff? Because
it's one of the best kept secrets in mental health management, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. And it should be focused on, I believe it should be focused on right at the beginning of therapy, to understand that with our clients as well, because you will have erratic or chaotic sleep or rest or self-care, etc. And those things are some of the other things that can be almost managed by the client themselves to go, wow, I feel a lot better because I've got a lot more energy. I've got a lot more spare capacity to indulge in this work and focus and, become more competent at it.
Yeah.
So another part of it, sorry, I was just jumping up there, wasn't I?
I was saying, as a way to keep you going.
All right, okay.
The non-committal verbal,
After we've made that initial challenge, we're looking at about some control and rationalize. CCR, control and rationalize. Challenge, control, rationalize. That control is all about, when you become competent, is identifying the specific negative thinking pattern that you're in at that time and challenging that pattern. Now, we all know that we all do them all the time, but again, these are things that can go out of kilter, especially when we've had experiences that have impacted us in a negative way. Things like catastrophizing, emotional reasoning, judgments, compare and despair, critical self. I could go on and on and on about all these different patterns that we have in our minds, again, to keep us safe, but if unguarded, they can actually cause us more harm than good. And so once we go on, sorry.
Are you talking about recognition kind of in the moment? Like I've got myself a little bit of a handle, and then the next thing maybe I move to is a questioning, is then to say, I wonder what's going on with me. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. But I want to recognize what it is first.
Yeah.
And it comes once I get my clients to understand about negative thinking habits, or some people term them as unhelpful thinking thoughts and that. But there are a series of them, and you could probably find hundreds out there that people have named them in different things. But I get my clients to understand not only what they are, but also how to challenge those ones. So catastrophizing is a beautiful example to use. Something's going on, we've been stimulated, and all of a sudden it's Armageddon, or the sky's going to fall in. Because we're here and it's all going turbo with the chimp, we're not here going, whoa, this isn't what's really going to happen.
And it also, it totally makes sense, because I find that it also happens when there is silence as well. When we have silence or lack of information, that is very fertile ground, right, for an anxiety response to say, because anxiety will fill up any lack of information with the worst possible scenario seeming imminent, right? So, yeah.
And so, again, it doesn't always have to be a situation where there's an outcome. It might just be a feeling, or I just feel so bad. I just feel so bad, and the world's going to end. Oh, compare and despair, and even that, and that's the kind of things that can fill those voids. Even those things, so we can challenge the actual pattern. We can challenge the thought, feeling, or if it's an emotion, challenge that emotion. But we have choice. We always have choice. And the more competent we come, because of the more repetition and the graft and the work that we've done in learning about this stuff and finding the things that it is that we are suffering from the most, the easier that becomes, that notion.
Interesting. Yeah. And so it is one of those things that you get better at. And once again, that's where I think like that binary choice of either or. Am I winning with my anxiety or am I losing? It's like, well, neither. I'm just trying to encounter it. And like you say, we get better over time. And that's part of that acceptance piece, to say, I'm going to be bad at it sometimes, right? I'm going to say, all right, calm myself down. All right, now what's causing this? No, I don't know. Blah. You know, and then we think we failed, and it's like, yeah, sure, but that's part of the improvement of it, to say, well, next time I'll be prepared for that and I'll be able to do a little better. And I find that's a lot of times, especially with anxiety, the anxiety then attacks my response to the anxiety, right? To where I'm like, oh, I suck at responding to anxiety. Now I'm anxious about that. And then I don't practice. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is where boundaries, personal, internal, and externally focused. And I always get my clients to, focus initially on those internal ones. So that's self-compassion, self-respect, self-kindness, all of those type of things to build self-belief and self-worth, so that when those times do happen, I don't start getting a big stick and hit myself over the head going, oh, you've messed up again. It's, whoa, it's an experience. Like, what can I learn from this experience? How do I challenge it? How do I rationalize it? It was horrible.
Yeah. Actually, it gets in the way. Certain of those thinking gets in the way of being able to do anything, because we're not accepting the experience we're having. That's what you're saying. Yeah.
Also understanding what those things are, because what in time I want my clients to do is pull out the detail. Because initially it's just this override and whoa, what is this stuff? But as they become more competent in all of these skills that we do at the beginning, in the first few weeks of our therapy, then I want to draw the detail and go, like, what is it for you? Have a look what it is for you, because that's the client's then awareness of themselves. And awareness is great, but it's a double-edged sword, because you can become over-analytical of it and almost become a self-critic, rather than an internal supervisor. But if you have the understanding, right, this is predominantly why this happens to me, what experience in the past have made this, come to fruition in my life now, okay, I now have strategies that I can start to employ that are personal to me, that is in my terminology, that I can use in these moments of high stress or medium stress or low stress or whatever. And some of those questions are quite easy. If we can have a handful of questions, they don't have to be deep psychotherapeutic questions. It can be, hey, is this worry really realistic in this moment? Is this really likely to happen? What is going on for me right now?
There's sometimes I like to think of it as anxiety is a magnifying glass, right? It can amplify and it can distort, just like a magnifying glass. And usually it doesn't invent things. It amplifies real things that are there. And so they are real, but it's like asking ourselves the question of, like, what's under the magnifying glass? If I was to be able to peer under it, what do I see? What's the realistic struggle? Is like, oh, I do need to worry about my taxes, but I don't need to do it right now, or else my life will fall apart. That's what's on top of the glass, right? On top of the glass is urgency. Underneath might be importance, but it's not something that's going to kill me right now, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I use a lot, and clients find their own way, but I term it journaling. And I don't like the term, but it's a widely recognized term. Whenever I first introduce it to a client that I think it might be beneficial for them, they're like, whoa, I don't have 2 hours every night to write about how my day was and what I did. And I'm like, no. It can be 5 minutes. It can be 2 minutes. It can be a list. It can be all those stuff to take those ruminations and those patterns out, put them on paper. Sometimes you'll be able to then once everything's calmed down, you can go back to them and refer, because there's a lot of times with that high anxiety or anger or any big emotional stressor that once we are through it, we can't compute how it was triggered, what was going on for us. Whereas if in that moment with a notebook, I always carry a couple of A5s, whether one for work, one, stuff, one for my own stuff, to go, oh, what's going on there? Sometimes it might be, he cut me up in the car, I'm really, really angry, right? And in that moment, it might be I'll just screw it up and throw it away, or I might eat anything.
Better pull over first. Pull over before.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. It's on the windscreen.
Yeah, I know. Well, and Jen, you're driving on the correct side of the road. That if you were to throw it out the window, which we're not advocating, it would actually just go on the side of the road. Whereas over across the pond here, it would hit another driver or something. So, you have to know the traffic laws of where you are.
Well,
no, exactly. But I think it's so powerful though, in a way. And I think you're absolutely right. And isn't it funny that even as therapists, we balk at it a little bit to say journaling, right? I know, because we know like the term has a reputation or whatever. And to say sometimes those things that are really simple are actually the reason they're kicked around so much is because they really are effective too, right? Yeah.
And it has to be an individual's choice, and they'll find their way with it. And that's why, when I'm explaining it, I've got the whiteboard or whatever I've got, and I have stuff and go, hey, here's some examples. It isn't not writing, a Mark Twain novel. You are just doing the bits that actually suits you, whether that be a list, whether that be just whether it be a scribble. It doesn't matter. The whole point of doing is almost kind of, again, doing a cognitive thing at the same time, fighting that push me, pull you back and forth. It's almost doing another. It's like the sweep we were talking about when we were doing the orientating, that and you're engaged. So it's another way to be almost winning that internal struggle between that emotion and that prefrontal cortex.
Sure. And once again, because it's like the attention is fuel for the anxiety. If you take away, it's sort of like, if you were to take away just a certain percentage of the power from the battery of your car wouldn't start. It wouldn't have to be 100%. Right. And I think that's once again that to say that if I do something, it can feel like, well, will it really help? And it's like, well, as you put it, it helps more over time, right? It can definitely help more over time. But even in the short term, if we do a little something, if I'm a little successful, I will probably feel a little better. And that's better than not feeling a little better. And that sometimes there's that goal. Once again, we set ourselves up to say, I got to make it so I'm not anxious, or else I'm not winning. I'm not succeeding. And it's like, no, we go for as much as we can, as much success as we can. Yeah.
And that's why I say little and often, always small steps. So even when practicing techniques or learning about this stuff, I'd rather my clients did it. I say to every one of them, I do not want you coming home from work or trying to find an hour here or 2 hours here to almost study this. I would rather you were doing it 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 5 or 6 times a day initially to build that habit.
Because I think one of the main methods of how to do something is the way that I will do it, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's like, it's more effective to do it in a way that I'm going to actually do it than it is to aspire to doing it in a way that is overwhelming and I'll just never touch it.
It's got to fit into your life. It's got to become yours. You've got to own it. We can sit and spout neuroscience and research and theories, etc. And we can go in there and push, or offer, but the client will only take it if they can see how they can implement it. And it goes back to how we were talking about almost coaching and mentoring through techniques rather than just offering over and expecting the client to go away and understand why it works, how it works, and why they should even bother investing. This is the same context. It's very, very important that the client can see how they can fit it into their pattern of life. Because you and I, look at today, look at us meeting, we were meant to meet over a week ago, but life is too fast. It throws stuff at you. So you try and imagine coming into a therapeutic session for professional help and then having to find extra time to do that work when some of your issues might already be procrastination and anxiety about not having enough control in your life because you're at the beck of all of other things, whether that be works and groups and this and that and the other, to then almost force or pressurize here's some more work to do. And that person's like, whoa, my life's already nuts. And now all of a sudden,
yeah. And it's interesting too to say, how do we balance that? Because sort of our modern world does call for some of that. And, there are kind of there is the mentality of saying, how do I break free completely from that? How do I, can I be the I don't know, guru up in the mountaintop or whatever. And it's interesting. I just was watching this thing for those of out there in the podcasting world who know who the McElroys are. It's a family of podcasters, these three brothers who do. Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They do comedy shows and commentary shows. But I just watched this thing where one of them was giving some kind of a presentation talking about his career. And he's also one of the founders of Polygon, which video game nerds out there will also recognize. And, very, very accomplished individual at a young age. And it was very interesting. One of the things he said, and he's also someone with like social and other forms of anxiety he talked about. And he said that he neglected his mental health for years and years and years, just burning it at both ends. And then he said, it's easy for me to stand here now and tell all of you, it's mostly college students. And he said, I could tell all of you, don't work as hard as I did, be healthier. He's like, but then again, I've accomplished a lot, and I don't want to be that guy who's like, I don't know if I would have accomplished a lot if I would have been more attentive to my mental health needs. Would I be standing here today? And I thought that was such a great and honest thing to say, because so many times we get that in our head of like, well, I got to unplug. And what does that mean? It means I'm going up to the mountains every day and I'm going out sailing or something. Who knows what that means? And how do we unplug, but yet at the same time chase whatever goals we have that might very well be tied to the modern world? It's a very difficult balance, So,
I think, and this is, it's like I'm covering so many of my fundamentals tonight. So, and this is what I term resourcing. And I break my resourcing down into 3 distinct groups. The middle group is easier to understand first, is that type of stuff you're on about. I term it an hour to an hour and a half, whether that's going for a run or going down the gym or going out and doing a painting, whatever your thing is, it's that. Then you have 2 hours plus, and that's kind of the stuff people live for the weekend for. Woo, it's Friday, we're going away, boom, and the big meals and stuff like that. But for me, the most fundamentally important is the one at the beginning, and people always laugh at it when I talk about it, and it's 10 to 20 minutes. That's all I'm asking. But I'm asking for 10 minutes every day for about 5 or 6 times a day. Whether that is me driving in the car, right, how's things going, boom, boom, boom. Whether that's me stopping. I had somebody who got into crochet, and they would go take themselves off to one side with a coffee or cup of tea, or on their breaks, 10 minutes of crochet, 10 minutes of this or that. And I have a long list of stuff that I offer my clients over the years for them to research themselves, but it's got to be stuff that floats their boat, that focuses them, that makes them content. I always use the analogy of, and they laugh, and I'm not condoning this, of a smoker. And I don't know if you know old factories that used to be.
Tell them to start smoking. I get it. Right.
No. Yeah, well, I don't do that. I'm just saying, have you ever seen an unhappy smoker? And they're stood outside the factory or whatever, or the office block. It might be raining and a big storm, and they're soaking wet. The boss is shouting out the window, "Oi, that's your 10th cigarette today. Get in!" Or the emails are going. For that 7 minutes, they don't care.
But they're there. Yeah. That's a good point.
They are in the moment. They are doing something. Don't get me wrong. I understand some of it is a nicotine hit, but the other side of it, for a moment, they are in the here and now, just for themselves, nothing else. They have shut out everything.
Absolutely. I met someone once who, and I think addiction in a weird way can actually be a teacher of exactly what you're saying. Met someone once who talked about riding his bike to his dealer's house to get drugs. and how he got a flat tire a half a mile from home. And he said, so what I did was I picked up my bike and I walked 3 miles to my dealer's house rather than walk a half a mile back home and fix my bike. I was not turning back until I scored, and then walked 3 miles back to my, or whatever, carrying my broken bike. And then though the reason for that is that I bring that up is the same individual said, and now I realize that I need to put that much effort. It's not as easy because it's not addictive, not immediately pleasurable, but if I put that much effort into getting drugs when I didn't have a car and I didn't have any money and I didn't have a method of transportation, then I need to put that much effort into being sober and making that work for me. And it's interesting to see that and say, I have the drive if I was motivated maybe by the nicotine or by the addiction. So that's an interesting point you bring up there. Yeah. To say, I'm not going to not take the smoke break. Even if my boss is mad, I'm still going to go out there. Instead of saying moment,
they're in their own place. I still do it now because of obviously my own journey of recovery, etc. I still have my daily resources. They are very, very important to me. A number of years ago, I was in Afghanistan, and before I realized what was really going on for me and stuff, and I found coffee, and I was like, boom. Today, coffee is still one of my resources, but I can't remember really having just pouring a cup, lots of hot water. Now, if I'm out and I'll spend time between clients or a hectic day, and I've got my own little blends I make up of coffee with different beans and that. And I know exactly what they're like. And I will go, right, Dan, you need 10 minutes. Roger, boom, out I go, get my aeropress or my cafetiere ready. And I know exactly, right, this blend is 6.5 minutes. And all that time, for that 10 minutes, I am focused like that. Everything else, bills, accountants, clients, everything else. Nothing else is there for me, and I have a little reward at the end of it.
There's a ritual there. Yeah.
But it's for me, and I'm refueling, resourcing myself, not just with that physical thing, but my mind is focused on that and not on the other stresses that are trying to pull me left, right, and Chelsea to attribute my time to them.
Do you find that you mentioned you make lists? So do you find that one of the things that's difficult for people is that they don't have those things at all? It's like, take 10 minutes for yourself, and people are like, and do what?
Yeah.
I don't have the coffee blend or the crocheting or the whatever it is that I don't have or don't have anymore. Like, how do you approach that with people as far as generating it? Obviously, there's suggestions, like you mentioned.
Yeah. So what I kind of do is when we get onto the resourcing stage of, I don't like to call it a program. It's not a program because I tailor it and it doesn't always fit in a nice row. I might have to move things around depending on that individual and depending on what they've already got in their life. I generally find a lot of my clients don't have the 10-minute ones. They have good ones at an hour, hour and a half, or they have 2 hour plus because they're quite easy to do. So I have a list that I kind of generated through my own experience, through clients' experience, etc. But I caveat that with, please, please, please look at this list, but don't throw anything away. Just look a bit deeper and pick some out. Try them. If you don't like them, put them away, because it can be things as simple as drawing or coloring, or it can, crochet I've mentioned. It can be navigation. It can be astrology. There is a raft of stuff you can do for 10 minutes, but it can also expand into another one of those larger resources so that you've almost plays out so that you're filling your life with stuff that makes you happy and content to get that balance between work and play.
It's interesting. It's interesting when you put it that way, to experiment then with something. And the funny thing is then there's a hidden benefit there, which is that the looking for can become your thing for a minute, right?
Yeah.
Is that my searching for it is going to take that 10 minutes here and there. I'm going to say, let me look at that list. I don't know. Let me try researching French agricultural law from the 1600s, or whatever else. I assume that's on your list. And so when people do that, and then they're like, well, I didn't like that very much, or maybe I did, but the fact is, trying something new is a thing, right? There's a ritual now that I'm starting. Yeah.
It's focus. It's challenge. you've now been challenged to find stuff that makes you happy.
Yeah.
So already doing something, those notions of, oh, I can't do that, I'm just so low, and then boom, I've just been spiked, I can't do this. Even by offering that up, and again, sitting with them. Some of my sessions, I might sit and we might go through the list and go, hey, you've not picked any, why? Oh, well, right, let's get a phone out. Can't have a phone in a therapy room. Yes, I can. And we'll go through stuff and we'll look at stuff and they'll go, I might give that a try. Then they'll go away and research it. They're developing a habit now to almost self-motivate. To actually, wow, there is stuff out there. I thought everything was dull and grey. There's actually stuff that does spark an interest in me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I had a boss once who would recommend this to, it was when I was an intern, and she loved to tell people to go out and at the time she'd say, get a shoebox, right? And now you might say, turn your camera on your phone, a little easier, but either way, the idea was there's this shoebox and every day go somewhere in your house or outside or anywhere that you can go and find something that reminds you that the world is sometimes a cool place and that it's okay to be here and live here, and then put it in the box. And then once a week, empty out the box and see what you got, and I find that also today people can do this with take a picture, right? Take a picture on your phone and then scroll back through it or make a gallery or whatever. That sometimes it's like, boy, even if I can't get myself to try a new interest, I can look for things that remind me, oh yeah, that house looked cool. I don't even know why. Just did. I like the way it was built, Yeah. So trying to find that. And in a way, that's what you're trying to remind yourself. Because I think when we're caught up in the anxiety, the world doesn't seem very cool. It doesn't seem like a cool place to be. And then not to say this in a silly way, but there's a part of us that's like, I'd like to check out of here. I don't like it here. And then it either can trigger suicide, risk to our life. But I find even more common than risk to our life physically, not to make light of that at all, but more commonly, there are a lot of people who don't kill themselves, but the risk is to their quality of life, is that I might not ever die by my own hand, but I might hate my life, and that is also tragic. I don't think about that sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I do a lot of work with Viktor Frankl's stuff in logotherapy and meaning and purpose and looking at that. And anybody can go and look at his stuff. Is everywhere. It is really, really good stuff. But almost, we will sit a time with clients, especially when they're going through a bad period, and go, hey, are you getting that 30 seconds? Because I'm not.
Yeah.
And every day that you are not feeling, you are either not invested in the work or you're having a hard time, etc., and life does feel pretty like rubbish, you're missing that time. You won't get that back. But together, the team, we can actually mean that you may able to have as much contentment as happiness as you deserve, because you own it. You are responsible for your life.
Yeah. I have a question here, and I put this in because somebody shared it. They didn't share it directly on the thing, but I have it here. So I'm going to share that about overthinking. We mentioned somebody messaged and said, how do we avoid that? What do we do to avoid overthinking? And it's a good question, because if you're good at anxiety, you're good at analysis. That's why they say smart people are more anxious and anxious people are more smart, right? Is you're really good at a sense of imagination of all the bad things that can happen. And that analysis can really backfire. You mentioned earlier. What would you say are some ways to avoid this overthinking?
And this goes so when we talk about ruminating or overthinking, etc., we've first got to understand what that is for the individual. It's a very generic term. Is it work-based stuff? Is it home-based stuff? Is it self-focused type stuff? But what we understand by overthinking is that, yes, it is a lot of stuff, of synapses firing off with different stuff. But again, that falls into what we were talking about earlier on, the negative thinking patterns. Once we can identify which ones that overthinking is, we can then start to challenge them. We also have to develop something, especially when we talk about our critical self. We also have to balance that with something called our internal supervisor. And it's no different to a coach. Some people call it an internal coach, etc. And it's almost balancing that stuff. And sometimes with overthinking, again, journaling is a good way to start laying it out, because a lot of overthinking is almost thinking of too many outcomes. And after a while, those outcomes become so far removed from reality, and they are fed again by anxiety. They are fed by other negative thinking patterns, such as mountains and molehills, predicting, judgments, assumptions, shoulds, musts. There are so many different negative thinking patterns that could impact it. It's hard to answer such a generic question, in a couple of minutes, but it's about understanding what you are and what those negative thinking patterns are, and then have the appropriate challenge towards them. But I suppose the easiest way to put it is to develop that internal coach, that realistic supervisor. And writing down can do that, because again, we're bringing us back into a cognitive space. And if you've been given a target or a solution that you have to meet at a certain deadline, etc., and you're like, oh no, this, I need to do this, or it could be this, or it could be that. It's kind of like, hold on, just put them on paper. Let's get rational again. Let's actually write these things down and see which ones are realistic. And we can almost then prioritize some where you'll be able to just score straight off the list, because you go, why did I think that's just not going to happen in a month of Sundays? Something else.
If you combine it, because I like to be very strengths based, and look at it and say, as we talk about sometimes on the show, what's our superpower, right? That's tied in with it. So if you are an anxious person, you're also a smart person, generally speaking, and that's research based too. It's not just me making it up and being nice. I think that we sometimes fear that analysis because of our tendency to overanalyze. And when it's like, but if I have control, if I am mood regulated, that is a strength then. And I can sit down and do what you're just saying, which is I can analyze my anxiety. I can analyze what's going on there. And part of that, I find there's a way to combat that sometimes is to reframe it into saying, can I learn to trust myself that when I am calm, I will be smart enough to solve the problem? And when I'm anxious, I don't have that power. And the power is being used against me, sort of. The anxiety turns it on me, and now all of a sudden, now my analysis is destructive. But when I'm calm, the analysis can actually be, I'm going to figure it out because I'm an analytical overthinker. So when I'm calm, I can overthink my way out into a good space sometimes.
Yeah. It's fundamentally, what is analysis? Analysis is just the search for understanding. So it's, if we are highly stressed and highly emotional, any analysis is going to be biased or skewed. And so there is no understanding, because anybody who suffers high levels of anxiety or hypervigilance and that type of stuff will always understand that it's almost, you can see stuff or you can feel stuff, but it's swirling. And sometimes you can catch detail and sometimes you can't. And it's, before you try and catch it, it's gone round you again. Whereas that, right, let's bring myself back into the rational techniques, challenge, rationalize, all that, orientate, all that type of stuff. Boom. Balance my analysis. Balance my understanding of myself. Was that a bit fluffy, or was that kind of all right?
That was cool. No, it was good. It made sense to me. Well, because I think if you've ever had that feeling, I think people get it. I mean, sometimes they call it racing thoughts. And sometimes I think of it as my brain being actually fuzzy, right? Or my brain being like, it's not, racing thoughts to me still makes it sound like they're discernible. For me, I like to sometimes make if you draw up a to-do list and you think about it, you've got that, here's what I got to do today, get the groceries, feed the dog, take the kid to school, whatever it is. And then, you put like 10 items on your to-do list. And then I say, if you really want to get at what that anxiety feels like, rewrite the list, but rewrite everything on top of each other, right? It's the same list. exact same list if you write it the same way. It's just one format is much more useful than the other. And that to me is what it's like. It's like the whole list on top of each other. Everything's equally important. Everything has to be done right now. And so therefore I've already lost that struggle. So that to me is exactly what you're saying, right? Is these thoughts are actually crashing into each other and causing.
And some of them are moving to, remember, the amount of our synapses that fire off, the amount of stuff that we can compute in any given day. You know, it's intangible. There's more known about the universe and the bottom of the ocean than there is about this. You know, we sometimes how complex we are and how much we are processing in any one moment. And that's just in the here and now. That's not looking forward. And that's certainly not what has affected us from the past. And so although it might be that daily stuff, there's also other, it's not called a subconscious for nothing. There's also other stuff firing off. And that's where I see the, whoa, sometimes I feel it. Sometimes I can see it and define it. But if I want to grab it, it's gone because something else is gone. And that's where, whoa, I'm not going to be able to do any of this because what bit do I grab first?
And exactly, that's where I feel like the acceptance really comes in a lot, is to say some of that is a subconscious thing, and can I change it? Can I not? Yeah, it may change over time, but I can't grab it, so I got to say it's there. That's part of who I am, but I can do with the conscious. So we're coming up on kind of time for today we're going to do, but so tell everybody where they find you, tell them about your practice and how all of us need to, even if they have to fly to the UK, you know, we're going to advocate that. We're not giving out any free tickets or anything, but you know.
I'm Sea and Land Therapy. I work indoors and outdoors with trauma and complex mental health needs. Royal Marine after 26 years and stuff, and hence it's drawn me to this because of my own experience and experience of close buddies and families as well, because of that, how they've been affected. You can follow me on Facebook on Sea and Land Therapy, or on Instagram on Sea and Land Therapy. I'm not that hard to find. Don't really do Twitters and stuff like that because I'm just not very good at IT stuff. So I'm nice and simple. There's loads of stuff on there. There's more resources being added all the time, and there's the usual boom. If you need something just to spark you and pick you up for the day, or if you ever want to message me and pose a question, I'm always available to do so, obviously respecting the time difference as well. It might not be an instantaneous response.
3 a.m. is the best time to get a hold of him, everybody. So actually, it's not bad if I send it at 3 a.m. my time, because you're like having mid-morning. You're probably making your nice blend of coffee, and you can answer right then. Like, what are you doing up? Oh my gosh! Then you'll tell me to go to sleep, and it'll be helpful to my mental health.
Okay. It's right. You got to take your little girl to school in the morning. Go to bed.
Do you ever work with people through like telehealth or something? If somebody wants to reach out from a distance?
Yeah. So I see clients online on on Zoom platforms and stuff like that as well. So I'm always open to that. I always do an assessment beforehand at no cost whatsoever, due to the fact that we need to get to know each other. You know what you'll get, whether we like each other. We have that instant connection, because I think it's really, really important between a therapist and their client that
very important.
They can connect and be a team, because it's a team effort at the end of the day.
And it doesn't work if you don't have that. I mean, basically that's what they find, right? No matter what you do, it just doesn't work without that. So, well, thank you again, Dan. And thank you everybody for tuning in. Both those that have come, I've been watching you come in and out. Some of y'all while we're going, there's a little number ticker, but we often find that many more will watch this over the ensuing week or so on Facebook. You can also go to the Broken Brain podcast channel on YouTube. Go to the one that's Broken and Brain, 2 separate words. Don't go to the one that's one word. That's the people who stole my name a few years ago, but I'm not bitter. And you can see that one will stay up. Well, I think Facebook stays up for a week or something. So, and as always, you can reach us at Break a Brain on Twitter, or you can also just basically comment here on the Facebook page and let us know things that you'd like to see us talk about. So, all righty. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Will do. Cheers. Bye.